Good morning, Sag. Are you alright?
I feel a little dizzy. Where are we? Our old home is gone. However, an old friend of mine allowed me to live in this small house anytime I want to. What happened to our home? Well... Welcome to Movie Rehab. Are you sane enough to escape? Oh, what's going on? Ah! Oh yeah, I remember that. A roof break seemed to have hit my head, and I can't really remember anything else. Oh well, that definitely brings my new Movie Rehab episode to a halt again.
Don't you want to rest for now? It looks like you're still not in the right state to do a review.
Forget it. I've laid down long enough. However, I think I'm just going to review something easier for now.
What exactly would that be?
I appreciate the fact that I'm sensitive and shy, but can't you see that I don't wanna say goodbye? You open up my eyes that people may be cruel, but level is the worst, cause the kind lives in you.
Welcome to Nudie Rehab. Are you hot enough to get some pleasure from the show? Today, I'll take a look at Axel Braun's Justice League. I will review his parodies to Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and the Suicide Squad soon enough. But right now, I feel more like watching this uncreatively titled porn before the others. Let's go for it! Our movie actually starts out very promising. It shows us Knockout, played by Jesse Rhodes, asking Lashina, played by the late August Ames, what her mission is. Lashina then tells her that she should go to Earth and convince Superman to become part of their Legion. Some of those who have watched Zack Snyder's Batman v Superman, and in case you haven't watched it yet and don't want to get spoiled, just skip to this timeline right here, are maybe wondering how Superman could still be alive if he didn't make it in the original film. However, there actually is somewhat of a plausible reason here. You see, this movie is a loose continuation of the Batman v Superman porn parody, which in itself had a lot of moments in there that had little to nothing to do with the original one. But you know what? Those parodies had probably been written and filmed when neither of those films had been out at this point, so it would make sense that Braun would take some creative freedom by combining anything else known about the plot while adding his own storylines into the mix. It may come off as cheap, but I will defend him for that, because Braun definitely puts more effort into his writing than anything that Salzberg has ever done. And with some exceptions, he truly seems to care for the source material that he's remaking from. And yes, I said remaking, not parodying. Anyway, after the opening credits, we get to see Cat Grant, played by Jessica Drake, talking about the violence and death ratings rising up, and she'll be discussing this topic even further the next day with a special guest. Next, we cut to Diana, Wonder Woman Prince, played by Rami Raid, replacing Alison Tyler from the Batman v Superman porn parody due to her looking slightly closer to Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman. She's practicing her fighting skills with her friend Lefty, and they fight each other in such a choreographed way that actually makes the fighting scenes from the first season of Iron Fist look good in comparison. To be fair though, they probably just want to avoid any risk of facial disfigurement because, after all, this is not that kind of porn that we're looking at here. Diana then accidentally KOs Lefty, but all is forgiven fast, as they suddenly start to make out immediately. That's flimsy character writing if you ask me, but anyway, it's time to take a look at the first sex scene.
Miss Prince? Didn't mean to interrupt.
Alright, I didn't saw that interruption coming. Good one there, movie, because their chemistry was pretty much non-existent. We then get introduced to Hal Jordan, played by Xander Corvus. He tells Diana that Amanda Waller has sent him to her. Jordan then tells Diana that just like her, he had a history with aliens himself, so he takes a Green Lantern out of his backpack. And you know what? I just let the whole scene speak for itself.
In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might fear the Green Lantern's might!
That was awesome! Xander Corvus' delivery was very convincing and straight to the point, The music added a certain epic feel to the scene, which is not something you could claim very often about porn, and the costume looks way better and, dare I say, much more convincing than the one won in the 2011 Green Lantern movie. Probably because they didn't waste several $1 million on animating a suit. They could have just simply saved all that money by actually designing a real one. Sorry, I got a bit carried away right there. We'll get to that movie. I promise.
Huh? Ta-da.
I don't know why, but there's something about Diana's reaction that I find mildly amusing. I guess it's the little things in life, you know? Jordan then tells her that he fights for the greater good, just like her. However, she then pulls out her lasso of truth out of nowhere to find out whether or not he's telling the truth.
What else are you not telling me?
Ow. I think you're extremely attractive and I really want to kiss you, like really, really bad.
Alright, how's a replay here? So it's time to talk about the very first sex scene of this porn. This moment right there is a strong way to start out this movie. While I personally would rather ship Wonder Woman with Superman or especially Batman, both she and Hal Jordan do have some surprisingly good chemistry going on right there, which is very surprising if you consider that they only get it on because of sex and nothing else. Also, I'm usually not a fan of breast implants, but ignoring that, I still think that Romy Rain is very gorgeous looking as Wonder Woman, and her scenes with Dana Corvus are absolutely great. I do have one complaint though. Just like with every other superhero porn parody that Braun has ever done, he, for some reason, still insists that Hal should leave his costume on during the sex scene. Another complaint would be this pose right there. Seriously, that looks extremely uncomfortable. Those are just minor issues, however, because at the very least, Romy is mostly naked, which does somewhat balance it out. And to make things better, we get multiple butt sex scenes in there as well, and they do not disappoint me in the slightest. Bottom line, that sex scene was really good, and I really had a great time watching it. After that, we gotta learn that both Batman and Superman have retired from their superhero business, and that Darkseid is the main villain of this porn. I mean, wow, they actually went with Darkseid? Well, if that's the case, movie, then you better turn it into an epic fight! Next, we cut to Clark Kent, played by Ryan Driller, who's driving around with a tractor. You know, those scenes are shot in a way that make the film feel less like it's focusing on a humanized Superman and more like I'm watching a documentary about some random farmer. Anyway, we then get to see Clark drinking Woodruff juice? Well, actually it's liquefied kryptonite. That's really interesting, I have to admit that. Knockout then arrives at Clark's farm to offer him a chance to join her to the dark side. Obligatory bad pun check.
You're drinking distilled kryptonite?
Just enough to keep me grounded and powerless.
Now, for those who haven't watched the Batman v Superman porn parody, allow me to explain what's going on here. Back in the Batman v Superman porn parody, the Joker has killed Lois Lane, and even though he ended up having a threesome with Wonder Woman and Batman, the pain of losing her was still there. And because of that, Superman eventually hung up his cloak, with him now trying to live a normal life as his alter ego Clark Kent. And now you probably wonder, but Zach, none of what you've just mentioned sounded in any way comical. And that's because if it comes to porn parodies, Braun tends to mistake the term parodying with remaking. Except if it's a comedy, because then, for whatever reason, his movies tend to live up to that title. Back to the plot. Clark insists to knock out that the person he used to be is now gone for good, and he then tells her to get lost. Knockout, however, doesn't give up that easily, and then takes another approach.
Perhaps you can be seduced by the dark side?
It then randomly cuts to Lana Lang for about 10 seconds, just to establish the fact that he's cheating on her. What an asshole! Also, apparently it just took about a minute for her to convince him. So it's time to focus on this sex scene as a whole, and to make it short, it's not really worth mentioning, to be honest. I would probably think of it much better if it wasn't for Knockout still wearing his spandex costume, which honestly takes away a lot of the potential eroticism the scene could have had. Though, compared to most of the spandex scene I've seen from Braun, this one feels better executed for some reason. The chemistry is just okay, but nothing special, and the money shot is rather forgettable. So, overall, it's not good, but it's not awful either. It's just bad. That's all I can say about it. We then cut to Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, played by Giovanni Francesco, who is not only a decent casting choice for Ben Affleck's Batman, but he also manages to show off some pretty awesome moves, and just look at those abs. He then opens the door to let Diana in, and we get some exposition about Clark's loss and eventual descent into alcoholic kryptonite, etc, etc.
I didn't anticipate his desire to become human, to be permanent. The oracles of the Themyscira are never wrong, Bruce. Armies for an overlord called Darkseid are near. Earth needs every hero that it has.
As for acting itself, I would say that Rami Rain does a decent job as Wonder Woman. Giovanni Francesco, on the other hand, mostly sounds like a character from the world's first superhero-themed soap opera. Here's an example to understand what I mean.
He's crushed Diana. Losing Lois was hard for both of us. But when Kara left, he felt like a different kind of loneliness.
Selena Kyle, played by Aiden Ashley, then tells Diana to get out of the Wayne matter, and the movie then cuts back to Clark and Lana sitting together having a conversation.
You know that you can always hide here, Clark.
I'm not hiding, Lana. I'm just not helping anymore. Doubt that I ever did.
That's not true. You're still the Earth's greatest hero.
Until I fail or make a mistake. I'm just some alien menace.
Seriously, Braun, this is a porn parody, not a melodrama. I mean, there's nothing wrong with matching the style of the DCEU. In fact, I give you props for trying to stay as faithful as possible to the source material. I mean, the Zucker-Abrams-Zucker airplane duology does the same thing, and they're part of my favorite parody movies out there. With that being said, however, that does not mean that you have to copy the exact same tone as well. If I want to watch that, then I'm just going to see the original this porn is based on. The drama there actually feels legit.
Sounds like Superman's feeling way too sorry.
I'm hurting, Lana.
She then calls him out for cheating on her.
Can you imagine the kind of damage I could do if I was out there?
Oh, I know the damage that you're capable of. I'm not blind, Clark. I saw you with that whore. And you seemed more than happy just to hand the fucking world to her. You're a bastard.
Yeah, you tell him, Lana.
Look, I may be just a hick from Smallville, but even I can tell she's bad news. And so should you, Superman.
And what do you want me to do about it? Go tie on my red cape and go after her?
If that's what it takes, then just go. Yes, go.
We then cut away from the melodrama. Thank God. To meet some random robbers. Their plans fall through, however, as Batwoman appears out of nowhere. She fights off one guy and the other ones just run away. Those guys have to be the most cowardly robbers I've ever seen in a movie. Seriously, one gets defeated and that makes them run off? What, did they thought that robbing banks wouldn't cause any potential conflicts? Wonder Woman then appears, and they both have a terrible fight scene that thankfully just lasts for 10 seconds. Batwoman then gets an offer from Wonder Woman to join the Justice League, which Batwoman at first seems to reject. And then they both... Wow, that's very intense. Well, as I was trying to say, they both then passionately kiss each other and then immediately have sex because we girls have to stick together in the most literal sense possible, or something like that. So, what are my thoughts on this scene? This scene is actually decent. It could be great if not for Batwoman, who still wears her freaking costume throughout the entire sex scene for no reason whatsoever. But for what it's worth, it's pretty well done. And besides, Wonder Woman, yet again, takes off most of her clothes, just like what I've seen from the beginning. We get some nice angles from Rami, and the chemistry between the two is actually quite on point. Alright, so far we have 2 good sex scenes and 1 that isn't good. We still got a few scenes left, movie, so you better don't screw this up. We then cut back to Cat Grant doing an interview with Lex Luthor, played by Derek Pierce, on a talk show.
We are responsible for your transgressions.
Now, that's not what I said.
Well, then you are saying that LexCorp, the company you never divested yourself of, is guilt-free in the bizarro genetics crisis, illegal weapon sales, and polluting the Atlantic Ocean. Proven as fact by Arthur Curry and his environmentalists.
Wait, Aquaman is part of this continuity as well? That actually makes me kind of excited for Axel Braun's Aquaman porn parody. Though, one has to wonder, why was he excluded from this one to begin with? I mean, were they really unable to find a porn actor who looks physically the same as Jason Momoa? Well, if that's the case, then I hope that you are not going to screw up the casting on that one, Braun. We then cut back to Bruce visiting Barry Allen, played by Tyler Nixon. And I have to say that he really captured Ezra Miller's Barry Allen well. He's shy, socially awkward, and overall I think that Tyler Nixon does a great acting job in this flick. Anyway, Bruce then asks Barry if he got his suit ready for the fight, and Barry then reveals that the Flash suit is inside the ring he's wearing. Barry then tries to put on said suit. Cue the funny music.
Oh my god, Mr. Wayne, I am so sorry. I am still working out a lot of the kinks to perfect the costume and whatnot and coming out of the ring, and
Let's cut to the chase, Barry. We are facing a massive threat. Earth is facing a massive threat.
Wow, I know that people have mixed feelings on the tone of the theatrical cut of Justice League, but that would be nothing in comparison to this. First, a silly attempt at comedy, and then less than 10 seconds later we get back to being serious. With that being said, however, I'm still going to give credit for Braun for actually attempting humor. In comparison to the previous 2 installments, this movie at least tries to have humor in it. I mean, granted, it still sucks and it still feels, off-putting, but again, at least he tried. Which is definitely way more than I can say about his Man of Steel and Batman v Superman parodies. Bruce then tries to convince Barry to join the League, due to the fact that Earth will face a massive threat. A massive threat that was talked about in previous DCEU movies before.
We are facing a massive threat. Earth is facing a massive threat. I'm assembling a team of genetically enhanced individuals to help me defend the planet.
Wait, hold on. Did the vision that Bruce had in Batman v Superman also happen in this porn parody continuity as well? I'm asking because, as someone who has watched each and every one of those original movies that Braun has based his parodies on, I understandably know about Bruce's reference on a massive threat. However, how is an outsider supposed to know what the hell Bruce is talking about? I mean, seriously. This has never happened in the Batman v Superman porn parody. Well, at least not on screen. So, his statements about a massive threat, about a vision, that just comes completely out of nowhere. We then cut back to Lex Luthor and his henchwoman Mercy Graves, played by Karina Jade. They both have a short discussion about Lex's evil do's from the past.
Do you think she knows about Curry? Or Supergirl?
Everyone will if you don't pipe down.
Cat Grant then enters the room to tell Luthor that her show has the highest ratings of the year.
Only of the year? I'm so disappointed, Cat.
Well, cheer up, Buttercup. The headlines are coming in. How was that for broadcasting mixed messages? Was it what you wanted?
And then, right afterwards, they are celebrating their success by making out. Lex then commands Mercy to leave the room, but Cat then insists that she should stay. Why?
I think it's time we changed your views on gender equality. Miss Graves, care to join us?
Alright, this exchange doesn't really work because it completely contradicts Mercy's opinions towards Cat a few seconds earlier.
That Grant bitch went too far.
Well, anyway, this then leads to the next sex scene. Thoughts? You would think that a threesome between two beautiful women and one guy in between would be perfect, but to be completely honest, this scene lacks any eroticism. First of all, I think that Axel Braun seems to have a nudophobia of sorts, considering that most of his superhero-themed porn movies make him highly insist on superhero characters keep on wearing their suits. In this scene, however, it doesn't even make sense because none of those three are wearing any costumes to begin with, making Braun's insistence of those characters not taking off their clothes even more apparent. The next problem is the non-existent chemistry between each and every one of those characters. Mercy had expressed her disliking for Cat earlier, and yet this movie just suddenly wants to make me believe that she's hot for Cat? Not buying it. But it's not just them both. Lex also doesn't have any chemistry with either of those women. Seriously, this entire sex scene just feels so tacked on, and the relationship feels even more robotic than their acting on camera, which also feels rather dull. The only highlight is Jessica Drake's gorgeous looks, but that's about it. Overall, this scene wasn't pretty good. It may not be nearly as despicable as the Superman cheats on his girlfriend without feeling any remorse scene, but it lacks even more chemistry than the Superman one, which really surprises me, to be honest. This is also the last we gotta see of Luthor in this film. He doesn't add anything important to the plot, and his scenes could have been easily removed without anything important missing. That is one way to waste your audience's time, movie. Next, we cut to Diana and Hal lying naked in bed. Alright, you've just regained my attention again, movie. Diana and Hal basically hold a discussion about the fact that neither Batwoman nor Superman are joining the League, which is a huge problem since Darkseid is on his way to cause danger on Earth. After that, we see Bruce introducing Barry to the Batcave. Doing that, we also discover that the camera angle is a bit off, since Barry looks like he's about to shrink in this shot. Also, the chroma king in this scene looks pretty much on par with my own, which should be sad, but on the other hand, it adds more strength to my self-confidence, knowing that a no-budget internet critic like me can actually pull off the same kind of editing skills than a porn that obviously had a lot of money put into it. Anyway, after Barry discovered that Bruce is in fact the goddamn Batman, we then discovered that he doesn't wear any black around his eyes. You know, I've always wondered why there are movies in which superheroes are wearing black around their eyes if they're, wearing a mask, but honestly, I think this porn pretty much showcases as to why sometimes it's not a good idea to leave out the black mascara. The reason for that is usually so that the eyes would become more noticeable. With this porn parody, however, we can clearly see why leaving out sad makeup around Batman's eyes isn't such a good idea. It just makes the rest of the mask look incredibly goofy because sometimes it looks like Bruce can't even see through this damn thing. Batman then tells Barry that he chose to retire his superhero job because he made himself a promise that thanks to Selina Kyle's pregnancy, he doesn't want his expecting son to live a lonely life like him back when he lost his parents. Yikes, that's a lot of drama. Could we please go back to the more humorous aspect of this porn parody, please? After Bruce introduced Barry to the rest of the League as his potential future successor, we see him arguing with Diana, who's not happy about having someone as young as Barry, who's probably meant to be in his early 20s like the Ezra Miller incarnation, I'm pretty sure, to be part of the League, due to the danger that could cost his life.
Putting a kid in charge of the Batcave? You completely lost your mind!
This then leads to her making out with Batman, even though it was stated before that he's married and he's expecting a child. So I guess that makes Wonder Woman a very insensitive bitch. Meanwhile, Hal proceeds to use his ring to show off his powers to Barry, and the lad then shows off his ring as well, explaining the same story he explained to Bruce earlier. Barry then tries to use his ring to put on his costume again, which then leads to an admirably funny moment.
Ta-da!
Yeah, that's awesome, but don't you need to, see? Oh,
Yeah. Done.
All right.
Yeah, what do you think?
You look awesome.
Yeah, not bad, right?
This is cool. Yeah, but one question: what do you do with all your, your civvy clothes? Are just kind of.
Oh, those are, it's like a work in progress,
Right.
Yeah, working out the kinks.
It's a small moment, but it's pretty cute humor-wise. And the costume of the Flash actually looks pretty neat. Hal then tells Barry that he hears a sound coming from another room, and he then encourages him to follow his steps. We then cut to Wonder Woman giving Batman a BJ, with the rest of the League joining in the party, which is also very humorously done by Barry. I also like the music set in the background, which sounds very Junkie XL-like. But whatever, it's time to talk about the sex scene itself, and well, do some of you remember when in my Doctor Who review I stated that I'm not a fan of sex scenes that involve more than one guy? Well, my mind has changed over time, but anyway, let's talk about the scene itself. This is without a doubt the best sex scene in this movie. It may have been predictable for this porn to end on an orgy with Wonder Woman, but let's be honest here guys, this was an obligatory thing to happen, and we wouldn't have wanted it in any other way. The chemistry between Romy Rain and the others is pretty good, and the best tension to me are her interactions with Barry. But it actually makes sense if you think about it. I mean, she just began having sex with Batman for no other reason except for maybe just the kinks. Her relationship with Hal is also just based on sex, so there's no genuine love between those two. With Barry on the other hand, she's actually worried about his welfare, so her having sex with him feels like she's trying to make him feel more comfortable, and he's also returning his favor to her, which makes their relationship the most authentic one in this parody. It probably wasn't intended this way by Braun, but it actually works fine for me. In fact, I would actually love to see more scenes between us two alone in upcoming follow-ups. It is very telling that Barry's right in front of her to give out his final shot to Diana, without also looking like she's anticipating his aim the most. Another praise I have to give is that Wonder Woman, for the most part, actually takes off her clothes for the final act of the scene. So, you know what, it seems that he has somewhat learned from the errors of his past work. Almost. I know that I've mostly gushed about the chemistry between Romy Rain and Tyler Nixon, but the other guys also did a good job too. It's just that, well, their chemistry wasn't as good with her. The scene then ends with the guys giving out their money shots to Wonder Woman, with Barry of course having the best aim.
Give it to me, Barry. Show me what you're made of.
Overall, this sex scene was just great. The only thing was missing though was some butt sex, including DP action. With that, it could have been one of the best sex scenes I've ever seen in a porn parody. On the bright side though, it's hands down the best sex scene in this entire movie. And for what it's worth, it's still fantastic. Batwoman then appears completely out of nowhere to tell Diana that she's ready to join the team. This then leads to Wonder Woman holding a rousing speech about teamwork and how she's willing to lead the Justice League herself.
You need a leader? Then I will lead you. So stop whining. Stop hiding. Stop pretending.
After her speech, we see Superman crashing the party, with him wearing his famous black suit, which then leads to Batman comically complaining about the damage the former has caused by crashing through the Batcave.
Hello, Diana. Bruce?
Seriously? Did you forget where the front door was? Or do you just like to make an entrance?
I would also usually consider this to be some nice little bit of comedy. If it wasn't for the mood whiplash that would arrive seconds later. And I mean literally seconds.
Are you ready to lead us to certain death?
Oh, I'll lead you. But first you need to realize what I already have. Earth does not deserve me. Does not deserve us.
What, did Joss Whedon reshot this scene?
Hey, Soups, I'm Barry. I just wanted to say that it's just a really cool looking costume you got there.
What do you want, movie? Am I supposed to laugh, cry, or feel terrified? Just pick one emotion and stick with it. After that, this movie unfortunately chooses to abandon the whole comedic aspect it had gone for, even though that was rarely displayed in its parody anyway, and then decides to play everything else dead serious from now on.
Well, I know a good deal about that, Clark.
Don't call me that.
It's been 3 years. 3 years since she died. I know the pain.
Lois was pregnant.
What? I thought you couldn't.
Well, maybe I could. Or maybe it was yours!
So, this movie's Superman, who so far is the biggest asshole in this porn incarnation, offers Batman and the rest of the League to join him and Darkseid to rewrite Earth in its entirety. But Batman won't have any of that brainwashed bullshit and chooses to go up against his former friend. So with that, we can only expect an epic battle with the League going up against Superman, with the former knocking some sense into a lad, who would then eventually learn from his past mistakes, get over his personal grief, and then joining the League to go up against Darkseid.
I don't think so.
Wait, that's it? Like, they're about to fight and then it just ends? Wait, no, scratch that. It doesn't even have an ending. What, couldn't Braun think of a proper way to end this film, so he had to cut to the end credits before, things would actually get interesting? What a rip-off! And that was Axel Braun's Justice League. And despite the non-existent ending, I would still say that this was by far the best DC EU related porn parody that Braun has done. The acting was a bit meh, but I really enjoyed Tyler Nixon's performance as Barry Allen. And Rami Rain as Wonder Woman also deserves the same praise as well. There were 2 bad sex scenes, but 3 decent ones as well. The comedy in this movie came off as pretty awkward most of the time. While there were a few humorous bits that made me smile, most of the time it felt tacked on, and they often got ruined by the constant mood swinging. The dramatic parts came off as overly melodramatic in classic Braun fashion, but they were sometimes either balanced out or completely ruined by the comedic parts. So I guess in some weird way, the constant genre shifting were both a curse and a blessing. The production of values in this parody feels somewhat weaker if compared to the previous DCEU parodies, especially if it comes to the effects and costumes. The story itself felt like it was moving at a snail pace, and the movie ended at a point which would usually be the first 15 minutes of an actual movie. In the end, the Justice League porn parody by Axel Braun is the best if compared to Man of Steel XXX or Batman v Superman XXX, while at the same time it appears that he has slightly learned from his own mistakes, and what we've ended up with is a movie that porn-wise is pretty decent, but story-wise is incredibly lazy, and thus not very good. But I still recommend it if you are able to ignore the flaws of the latter. I hope you enjoyed this review, and at last I gotta say, I may be quite naughty, but my points are still valid.